Hello. Today we're going to talk about common knowledge. Imagine there are three people sitting looking at each other, and each person has on either a black or white hat. Everyone furthermore can see the hat of the other two people but can't see the hat on their own head. So this guy can see that this person's wearing a black hat and this person's wearing a black hat, but doesn't know if he himself is wearing a black or white hat. So in reality, as in this diagram, everyone is wearing a black hat. So each of the three people sees two other people are wearing a black hat, but is uncertain if he himself is wearing a black or white hat. Now suddenly, a fourth person comes, stands in the middle of them, and says, "Oh guys, by the way, at least one of you is wearing a black hat." Now, there's a counterintuitive result that man has actually told the three something they didn't know before. And I know this is weird, right? Because everyone can see two other people are wearing black hats. So when this man comes, stands in the center and says, "At least one of the three of you are wearing a black hat," then how has he communicated any information? Well, to show you this, let's say they do the following exercise. The man says the following to them next. He says, "If you are absolutely certain that you're wearing a black hat, please stand up." So, okay, all three hear this, and let's say they trust this guy and they're going to do what he says. So they're all sitting down and they say, they're told, okay, if you know you're wearing a black hat, stand up. Well, none of the three know that they're wearing a black hat, so none of them stand up. So what have we learned? Well, imagine this was what the world was like. It's not. All three are wearing black hats, but imagine this is what the world would be like. This is what the world was like. Well, if this is what the world was like, this guy would stand, right? If this was the true state of the world, he would, he heard, okay, well, I'm told that at least one person has a black hat. Wait, this guy doesn't have it and this guy doesn't have it, and there's only three of us. So if I'm told that at least one person has a black hat, that has to be me. Oh, well, I'll stand. So if this were the true state of the world, this guy would stand. And similarly, if this was the only guy with the black hat, he would stand. And if he was the only one with the black hat, he would stand. So at the end of round one, when no one stands, it becomes common knowledge that either two or three people are wearing a black hat. Because if just one were wearing a black hat, well, that person would stand. So now the man says again, if you are certain that you are wearing a black hat, stand up. Now no one stands, but if this were the true state of the world, these two people would stand. Because remember, because no one stood in round one, it becomes common knowledge that either two or three people are wearing black hats. Well, what about from the perspective of this guy? He's like, wait, I know two or three people are wearing black hats. This guy's one of them. This guy isn't. Oh, I have to be the second. Similarly, he would stand because he would say, well, I know two or three people are wearing black hats. He's one of them. He isn't. Therefore, I must be wearing a black hat. This guy wouldn't stand because he would say, okay, I know two or three people are wearing black hats. There's two. I guess I could be three, or there could be just two. So at the end of round two, if this were the true state of the world, two people would stand, but no one stands. That means all three know that three people are wearing black hats. So if the man says again, if you know you're wearing a black hat, please stand up, everyone would stand. So this is really weird, and you got to think about it for a while before you're going to get it. So I'll go through what happened again. There are three people, all are looking at each other, and all have on either a white or black hat. Everyone can see the hat of the other two people, but doesn't know the hat that he himself is wearing. In reality, all three have on black hats. Now a man who's trusted comes in, looks at all of them and says, at least one of you is wearing a black hat. He then says, if you know you're wearing a black hat, stand up. No one stands. He then says again, if you know you're wearing a black hat, stand up. No one stands. Third time he says, if you know you're wearing a black hat, stand up. And everyone stands. Okay, so we've worked through why that happens, but now let's answer the question of, well, what did the three learn when told that at least one person had a black hat? So I claim that the three actually learned something. It wasn't common knowledge that there was at least one person wearing a black hat. So, right, everyone knew that at least one other person had a black hat. In fact, everyone knew that two other people had black hats, and maybe there were three. So everyone knew, okay, there's either 2 or 3 black hats. But it still wasn't common knowledge that everyone had, that at least one person had on a black hat. So when something is common knowledge, I know it, you know it, I know you know it, you know that I know it, and I know that you know that I know it, and so on into infinity. Okay? So, it's possible, for example, that you're talking to somebody and you know their middle name, and they know their middle name, but they might not know that you know their middle name. So even though you know their middle name and they know their middle name, it wouldn't be common knowledge. Their middle name wouldn't be common knowledge if they didn't know that you knew. And you can keep going, I know what you know, and so on forever. So I'm claiming that before this man who said at least one of you wears a black hat spoke, it wasn't common knowledge among the three of them that at least one person had on a black hat. So let's see why. And I've now given the people names to make it easier to keep track of. This is the true state of the world, okay? But, Abe, before the man spoke, would say, well, this is possible, right? Abe's saying, well, I don't know. I know that Ben and Cindy have on black hats, but I don't know if I have one. So Abe would say, this is possible, right? From Abe's vantage point, Abe would say, this is a possible state of the world. Now, Abe would say, maybe Ben thinks this is possible, right? Abe's going to say, well, it's possible that I have a white hat on, and if I have a white hat on, Ben will think to himself that this is possible. Now, Ben doesn't actually think this is possible because Ben sees that Abe is wearing a black hat, but Abe doesn't know that. So Abe thinks that Ben might think that this is possible, because if Abe is wearing a white hat, and Abe thinks he might be, then Ben will say to himself, well, this could be possible. So Abe will think that Ben might think that this is possible. And finally, Abe will think that Ben might think that Cindy might think that this is possible. So Cindy doesn't think this is possible, and Ben doesn't think this is possible, but Abe might think that Ben might think that Cindy might think that this is possible. Again, Abe will say, okay, I could have a white hat on. And if I have a white hat on, Ben will think that, will see me have a white hat on and might think that he himself wears a white hat. Then Ben would say to himself, well, if these things were true, Cindy doesn't know what kind of hat she has on, so Cindy would think that this is possible. So before the man spoke, Abe could think that Ben could think that Cindy could think that everyone has on a white hat, or at least that's a possibility. When the man spoke, he basically crossed this out. He said, no, this isn't true. So the man did actually provide information to the three people that they didn't have before. By the way, there's a great episode of the TV show Friends that they don't explicitly go into game theory or common knowledge, but they do. It's sort of who knows what about what. So if you enjoyed this episode, and you can get this episode sheet, this video, and you enjoyed it, you probably like this episode of Friends. Okay, thank you.